just another walk to the jungle, as she calls it.
We're going to the jungle.
It's been a while since our last walk, our typical outdoor activity during 2020. Staying away from everyone, strangers, family and friends. For adults, we have our way to stay in touch. Text messages, group and video chats. For a 3.5-year-old little girl, is different. 2020 has been confusingly difficult for her, even if she doesn't really know. She has lost a lot more than what her young mind would ever realize. She has no kids her age to play with. With the baby brother born, she is no longer the center of attention. Thanksgiving was just a small meal with her mom and I, and Christmas will lack the usual extended family festivities. She still tries to make the most out of every little moment of her life, finding different creative ways to stay entertained. She looks forward to these trips outside, no matter how simple and mundane it may be. With all of her struggles, she still manages to have a smile every morning. Throw rocks with enthusiasm, and treat weeds with the delicacy of a flower.
Elmo, to the big bush! Take this and look. I'm picking the flower.
Maybe what I perceive as her struggles are really mine. Maybe what I believe is mundane is actually exciting.
I did it.
Maybe I should wake up every morning with a smile. Maybe I should do every project with enthusiasm. Maybe it is I that should be treating every moment with the delicacy of a flower. What's up everyone, Vu of nVu Films again, and I'm back with another idiotic video for you to watch. And today's video is idiotic because you basically just got clickbaited into watching a family film that I did. But to be fair, that film was indeed shot on this 35mm f1.8 lens on my Sony a7S III, and this is all I used. I used this lens, this camera body, and of course a black pro mist filter on top of this lens, but I'm using it right now on my 24mm G Master. And yeah, today I just want to tell you that this 35mm f1.8 prime, or pretty much any 35mm as long as it's at least f2 and brighter, is definitely one of the first lens, if not the first lens you should get for your Sony a7S III or any camera for video making, in my opinion. I know I've always been recommending the Sigma 2470 DGD, and DN stands for D's Nuts, as the first versatile lens you should get for pretty much any camera, and in this specific situation, the Sony a7S III for video. But if you don't like zooms, if you prefer to shoot with prime, and you're trying to find that one prime lens you should definitely get for your camera, it should definitely be a 35. I know 50mm could possibly be in the mix, but at times I have been stuck in situations where the 50mm was a bit too tight. And also 50mm doesn't cover as much as the environment if you're trying to get a more environmental shot. And that's why the 35mm comes into play. I know the 35mm might not get tight enough for certain shots that requires you to get in a little closer. And that's the one downer of the 35, because it is on the wide end. However, in most situations, you can get close enough to get a closer shot, you know, like a wedding or something. And also, you do have the ability to crop in quite a bit while you're shooting in 4K to get a closer shot without sacrificing too much quality. However, if you're in a situation where you're trying to film in a tight space, tight room, and you have something like a 50 or 85 millimeter, you're going to not have any room to back up. So that is why a 35 millimeter is really good. Another thing is, I have mentioned before that shooting wide angles really close to a subject is not always good because wide angle lenses tend to distort their face. But with this 35, especially a good 35, there should be some distortion, but not too much. And it shouldn't affect the subject's face too much. And so that you could still get a good shot even though you are close up to the subject on a 35 mil. Another thing to think about is when you're shooting wider, let's say 24 millimeter, 35 millimeter, even wider than that, and a zoom lens such as this f2.8 zoom lens, or like a 16 to 35 or Tamron 17 to 28 lens f2.8, when you're trying to shoot like a wider shot, like you're backing up further away from the subject, f2.8 doesn't offer quite as much subject isolation and shallow depth of field as I would like, especially when you're further away from the subject. As you get closer, f2.8 definitely, the closer you get, the more background blur you'll get. But if you want to get like these nice medium wider shots and you still want some subject isolation, you're going to need an f1.8 f2. So that's why I recommended that any 35 millimeter f1.8, f1.4, f1.2 even, and f2 would be great. I like this Sony because it is tiny. Of course, there's also the 1.4, the Sigma 1.2, like I just mentioned. But those are really big lenses, and at that size, you might as well just carry around something more versatile. But I think overall, you want a 35 millimeter lens for Sony, I do recommend this. However, I may even wait until 2021. There might be a 35 millimeter f1.4 G Master coming out from Sony that we might want to take a look into once that comes out. But overall, I really like using the 35 millimeter for run and gun shoots, or even just some solid documentary shooting on the 35 millimeter lens. Looks great. So that is why I recommend the 35 millimeter as your first prime lens. But besides that, I do want to talk about this one thing. I want to talk about creating. And as creators, as quote-unquote videographers, filmmakers, we always have this yearning for content. And a lot of times I see on YouTube or on Facebook groups, they always talk about how I always see a lot of people doing test footage, testing out like an image, grading, testing this and that, looking at artifacts and things of that nature, and all of these little like minutia of, in the grand scheme of things, doesn't matter when it comes to creating content. These days you could pick up any camera, and as long as you know what you're doing, and as long as you know what you're trying to create, you could create whatever it is that you want. Now, in my case, and a big excuse I hear from a lot of people is just they don't have any content. They need something to film. Like in my case, I do have client work. I do have weddings and stuff to film. So I always have stuff to film. But I made this film, and I do this a lot, with my family, with my daughter. It's just because you don't need to have like certain content to film. You can film just whatever it is you want to. And in my case, I just went out for a walk with my daughter for 30 minutes, and I created this little piece here that came from my heart. So just a quick reminder that, hey guys, stop mulling over specs. Stop mulling over picture profiles. Stop mulling over just looking at the corners of an image of the blacks and seeing noise and just complaining about it all day. At the end of the day, just go out and create. And I bet you, once you put together the whole thing, no one's going to sit there and nitpick the corner of your image to see that, oh, the blacks has some artifacts in there. If there is a person that does that, they are a massive douchebag that probably spends their whole day just doing nothing. I don't know. So anyways, with that being said, that is it for today, guys. Thank you for watching this far. Thank you for watching my film. And with that being said, till next time, lighten up.